Is $3 for cheese really a deal breaker? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. So I actually want to talk today about this trend that I've been seeing go around on social media. Basically about women flipping out about guys not being willing to spend a little bit of money on like extras at a restaurant. If any of you have seen the original trending video on this topic, basically there was a woman, I believe it was in New York City, went on a first date with a guy and he ordered a burger. I guess they asked if he wanted cheese. He asked if the cheese was extra. They said it was $3 extra. And he said, no, I don't want the cheese. This woman was basically telling the story in a TikTok video that she was just basically like so offended that she ate like part of her meal. Then she excused herself to go to the ladies' room. If I recall, she like told the waitress she was gonna pay the whole bill, then left the restaurant, texted him and said that she was like not interested in him, and then blocked him and was like so upset that this went the way it was because this is New York City and if he's not going to spend $3 extra for cheese, he's not worth her time, right? That's the gist of the video. I'm paraphrasing. Maybe other people interpreted it differently. It went viral. A lot of people had a lot of opinions about it. I kind of thought it had died down, but then I watched another video that was like totally unrelated to that one, where this woman basically was like flipping out on this guy because they went out on a date. I think it was a first date too, and he would not order guacamole for like his Mexican food because they charged extra for guacamole. And she like, that gave me the ick. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. And she was like angry at him because she was like, I mean, I don't want to go out with a penny pincher. Like I want to go out with somebody who like enjoys the luxuries of life and this and that. And so that's when I realized that obviously this was becoming a trend. Like not just that the video went viral, but like that this mentality was becoming a trend. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit more. When it comes to masculine feminine dynamics, and if you're not familiar with what I mean by that, I have a lot of other videos that dive into this more. Masculine and feminine energies are energies that live within all of us. We all contain both energies, but we all have a core energy. This is when we're most ourselves in. Most women are feminine at their core and most men are masculine at their core. There are exceptions, but generally that's how most of us are. Doesn't mean that we can't tap into the opposite energy whenever we need to, but it does mean that for most women, being in their feminine energy is going to feel most natural, and for most men, being in their masculine energy is going to feel most natural. Masculine energy tends to be very directional. It tends to be very purposeful. It tends to be very practical, very structured, very disciplined. Feminine energy tends to be about flow, openness, receptivity, pleasures, joy, sensations, feelings, emotions, that kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just a brief general summary. And in order to have sexual polarity in a relationship, like to have any kind of attraction to each other, you need one partner to be masculine, one partner to be feminine. So like the masculine is like the giver, literally like the giver, the penetrator. The feminine is like the receiver. She's open and receptive, right? That's how you get sexual dynamics, right? The idea of going out to a restaurant on a date, a masculine man is going to think very purposeful. He's going to think very practical. If he is told that, say, cheese or guacamole or something is extra money, he's going to think in his mind, is that money worth what I'm getting for it? And if he doesn't think that it is, he's going to turn it down, because the masculine is much more concerned with what is practical and what's necessary. The feminine is going to be more about pleasure and experiences. The feminine literally is the force of life, the force of nature. So for the feminine, she's not necessarily going to think about the money. She's going to think about what pleasure am I going to get from this. So for her, getting cheese on her burger or getting guacamole as a side dish, those are just the examples I'm using, but like this is with anything, right? She's not going to be thinking about the money. She's going to be thinking about the pleasure she gets from the experience. That's the difference in masculine feminine dynamics. So in reality, having a masculine partner who thinks very practically and having a feminine partner who thinks more about pleasure and sensations, that's actually a really great polarized dynamic right there. This does not mean that a man can't be interested in pleasures and sensations, and this does not mean that a woman cannot be practical and think about money. Doesn't mean that. It just means that your natural core energies for a man is going to be more about practicality, discipline, structure, simplicity, things like that, whereas the feminine is going to be more about pleasure, sensations, experiences, things like that. And when you have both of those, you have a masculine partner and you have a feminine partner, you can come together and it can work beautifully together. So that's the polarity. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of how this could go wrong or how this could be manifesting or why this is a thing in a minute, but I'm gonna get into a little bit of advice for men and then a little bit of advice for women. My advice for men I'm gonna start with, because I know most of my viewers tend to be women, but I do get a lot of guys who say that I'm way too hard on men and I'm too easy on women. And guys, I'm gonna side with you in this case. I do think that women that are freaking out about this stuff are overreacting, and I'm gonna get into my advice for them in a minute, but I'm gonna address the guys first. I'm seeing a lot of guys on social media. I don't think this is all men, but I'm seeing a lot of guys on social media that are getting really frustrated and fed up, like, I can't win. There's nothing that I can do. I can't win. My advice for guys is, for one, to not get too caught up in these viral videos that are going around. Even though some of these videos are viral, and even though this is kind of picking up a little bit more, and there are more women that are kind of picking up on doing this, which I don't think is a positive thing, but even with this, the majority of women are not going to see something like you not spending $3 on a piece of cheese or something as being a deal breaker. It is very easy, and this is actually something I saw Jordan Peterson talk about recently in an interview. It's very easy for us to see things happening on social media and the way people are acting on social media and assuming that it's the norm, when it's like, that's social media world. Could it become more common and more trendy in real life if something becomes trendy on social media? Yes, of course, it can happen. Things in the media can definitely affect people in their personal lives. However, most men are never going to meet a woman that's going to flip out on them simply because they didn't want to order $3 in cheese, or they didn't want to order guacamole or something like that, right? And I would encourage men, I've talked about this in other videos with, you know, ego versus soul needs and standards and things like that. I would actually encourage more men to not see it as like, oh, I guess you could never please any woman. I wouldn't think of it like that. I would actually encourage more men to really look at, what do you want your life to be like? Like, what is the type of lifestyle that you really want to show up in? Like, what are your priorities? What are your standards? Like, what is it that you think is important? And show up that way. When you do that, the women that are aligned with that are gonna stick around, and the women that aren't aligned with that are just gonna go away. And it doesn't mean anything about you. It just means that your lifestyle is not in alignment for them. I would say, for example, right, if you're the kind of guy, say, who, like, your ultimate goal is to move to the country and, you know, have a garden and, you know, live off the land or something. I'm gonna use an extreme example, but like, say that's your goal, right? But you're spending all of your time in the city trying to take women out to the most expensive fancy restaurants that are out there because you're trying to impress all these women. Are you really gonna be likely to meet a woman who also wants to give up that luxury lifestyle and move to the country and live off the land? Probably not. Maybe, but probably not as likely. So you're better off working towards living the lifestyle that you want to live, and then meeting somebody who also wants that lifestyle. And I know that that's like a much more dramatic version of just $3 worth of cheese, but in reality, I want you to get out of the mindset of trying to figure out what it is that all women want, or what is going to make all women happy, or how do I get, because you're never going to please every woman in the world. Like, you're never going to get every woman in the world to fall in love with you, in the same way that not every woman is going to get every man to fall in love with them. It's just not the way the world works, because we're not all meant to be with everybody. It's really more important that you find the woman that you are aligned with, that you are a match for. As a guy, in reality, if you don't want to spend the extra $3 on cheese, you want to spend the extra money on guacamole, you don't want to spend the extra money on something, that's fine. If it bothers a woman that much, then in reality, it's probably not about you. It's probably her stuff, and that's her thing, and she's got to work through that. The woman that is going to be aligned with the fact that you just don't want to spend the extra money on something that you just don't think is necessary, that woman's going to stick around, right? So I don't want you to get caught up in this idea that, like, oh, well, all women are going to get pissed off at me if I do this or that or whatever. Like, that's not actually what's going on here. Now, if the reason why you're penny pinching on a date is because you can't actually afford the restaurant that you were going to eat, and you are trying to eat someplace that is outside of your budget because you can't afford it because you're trying to impress this woman, that's not really in alignment either. So if you not spending the extra money is because you simply cannot afford it, like, you should never be taking a woman on a date that is out of your budget, because at the end of the day, you're trying to win a woman over being somebody that you're not. If a woman needs you to take her to a 5-star restaurant, but you can only afford a 3-star restaurant, going broke to take her to a 5-star restaurant you're not going to be able to maintain the lifestyle that she's expecting, and you two are just not going to be in alignment. You're better off just taking a woman to a nice 3-star restaurant, and if she's not satisfied with that, maybe you two just aren't a match, and that's fine. Like, not everybody is going to be a match for everybody. If you are finding yourself taking people out on dates that are just way outside your budget, ask yourself why you feel the need to do that, and really take a look at, like, okay, what can I truly afford? And not because I don't think that this woman's worth it, because if you don't think a woman is worth taking her out to dinner, don't waste your time with her. Like, it's not respectful of her time, it's not respectful of your time. But at the end of the day, do what you can afford. Like, know your budget. It's really important, especially if you're going to be the masculine partner in the relationship. It's really important that you know your budget and you know what you can afford, and you're actually making the effort to live within your budget, because a woman who's actually looking for a partner is going to appreciate a man who knows his budget and knows what he can afford. Like, she's gonna want that stability more than she's gonna want the flash, or for a man to keep, you know, overspending just to impress her. She's gonna be more impressed with a man who actually knows his budget, knows what he can afford, knows how to handle money. Now, if you are making decisions because you either are uncomfortable spending money, or you're uncomfortable saving money and you're just spending carelessly, like if you do have money issues, which most of us in the world today, men and women, have money issues. So if you have money issues, you're definitely not alone. I'm not a money mindset coach by any means. I struggle with money issues myself. So I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody how to fix their money issues, but I will say, if you are, especially if you are the masculine, so you want to be the masculine leader in a relationship, finding yourself like a money coach, or finding a money mentor or something, preferably someone you know. I mean, you can have like men who are successful, who you look up to, who you get inspiration from, but I would actually advise you to find men, like even in your life or something, that you can actually connect with, that are where you would like to be, or do have the mindset that you want, and actually look to them as mentors. Like, masculine mentors are actually one of the biggest things that's missing in our society right now. So if you are a man who's noticing that you're kind of penny pinching because you're really uncomfortable spending money, or you're noticing that maybe you're carelessly spending or something like that, I highly recommend not just to find a woman or to please a woman, but like for yourself, because every area of your life will be improved if you work on that aspect of yourself. Honestly, if you as a man show up with the lifestyle that you're comfortable showing up as, know your budget, know your money issues, work on your money blocks, and you know what? The women that are flipping out about the $3 worth of cheese or something, I wouldn't worry about them so much. I know it can feel frustrating when they show up and they flip out, but like, at the end of the day, they've got their own stuff they need to work through, and it's probably not your issue to work through, it's their issue to work through. Now, before I transition into my advice for women on this topic, I do want to make a little side note. There was another video that went viral of a woman who had gone on a date with a guy. She didn't show his face, you could just hear his voice, but he was on the date. He insisted on ordering for her, which I actually do think that ordering for a woman on a date is kind of a lost art. I think it can be a really gentlemanly thing to do, but she kept telling him like some of the things that she liked, and I think it's okay as a man to like make suggestions, or say like, hey, once you know the kind of things that she likes, maybe suggesting something, or you know, saying like, are you comfortable with maybe me picking something, like if you're familiar with the restaurant and she's not, or something like that. Like, those things can all be very appealing to a lot of women. However, she was kind of telling him some of the things that she liked, and he was basically like, no, you're gonna order this, I'm gonna order you this, I'm gonna order you this, I'm gonna order you that, nope, I'm gonna order you this to drink. And she was like, well, I don't really know if I like that. He's like, you'll like it. That's psychotic. Like, that was like, I was just sort of like, oh my god, this woman, like, I felt unsafe just listening to the conversation. The difference between that scenario and the scenario of the guy that didn't want to order the extra cheese or something like that was that the guy that was insisting on like telling the woman what she could eat, like, he was trying to control what she could eat, what she couldn't eat. In that situation, big red flag. Now, in the situations where the men who didn't want to order the extras, like they didn't want to order the $3 cheese or the guacamole or something like that, it didn't appear at all like these men were trying to control what the woman ordered. In that situation, I would say if you as a man are trying to control what the woman is ordering, like ordering for her can be very gentlemanly, but like if you're trying to control what she eats or things like that, like, that's a problem. And like, if you as a man are doing something like that, you got to work on that. Like, if you feel a need to control, like there's a difference between control and leadership. I have other videos where I talk about that, but I'm not going to dive into that too much in this video. I just want to add that note that, you know, for men, if you're showing up and you feel like you need to control what the other woman is eating, like, you can decide whatever you want to eat for yourself. Like, that's your decision. But if you're trying to control what she eats, you gotta work on control issues if that's what you're doing. And ladies, if you're on a date with a man who's trying to control what you're eating on a date, that's a red flag for so many other things in a relationship, not just him controlling what you eat, but like controlling in a lot of different ways. That's a big red flag. If a man is just showing up and trying to decide what he eats or how much he's willing to spend on his meal, different story. So I wanted to make a note of that. Now I want to talk about ladies. I'm all for women having standards. I think women need to have standards, and women need to have high standards. As I've said in many other videos, women need to have high standards because we're the ones that determine who we marry, who we start a family with. Those are some of the most important decisions that a woman is ever going to make, and we need to be able to hold men to a high standard. Those things are important. And I'm also not here to tell you what your standards should be. I have a lot of videos on ego versus soul needs. I highly recommend that as a woman, that when you are determining your standards, that you look for what your soul needs are, that you don't focus so much on just your ego needs or just your surface needs, and you actually look at what your soul truly needs, because that's what's important. Honestly, do I think that a man not ordering the extra cheese or not ordering extra guacamole or not wanting to spend that money is a red flag? No. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't think it's a red flag, because it's your decision. It's your life. It's your decision. However, in both of these situations, the women seemed really triggered by it. Like, really angry and triggered by it. And that's what I find concerning. If you see that as the two of you are not on the same page as having a compatible lifestyle, fine. But if your triggered reaction to him not wanting to order an extra side or spend a little bit of money to have an extra side is so triggering for you that you feel like you have to get up and leave the date, or you feel like you have to like have an angry rant about it, like some of these women were like angry. I mean, the woman with the guacamole was like angry. I know that probably that anger, that trigger, likely comes from trauma, because like I said, masculine feminine polarity is important, right? So a man being about structure, discipline, that kind of stuff is important. The woman being about pleasure, sensations, things like that, like that's important. Like that's how you two come together. Like that's the sexual attraction. However, it seems to me like that trigger, that anger about the situation is not just about the guy not ordering cheese or not ordering guacamole, right? Like it's never just about the cheese. Even if you feel deep admiration for cheese, it's never just about the cheese. Very likely, my guess is maybe even in childhood, but very likely in your past, most of these women probably experienced a man shaming, judging, criticizing something for this woman wanting to have a full experience or wanting to spend money on something or wanting to enjoy a pleasurable sensation that the man did not deem them worthy of. Shamed or judged them in some way because of that. Maybe it was childhood, might have been a past relationship, something. But there's been some way or something from these women's past. In the guacamole situation, the woman was like, yeah, the next thing you know, when I want to go someplace nicer, like on vacation, he's gonna want a budget, like this and that. Like, I get it. Like, I know what it's like to be in a relationship with a very cheap man, or a man who's really bad with money, or to be in a relationship with somebody where money issues are a big problem. I went through a whole divorce because of money issues. So I understand. However, even with all that, I don't find a man not wanting to order an extra side for his food or something, or pay a little bit of extra. I don't find that triggering. I would invite you, if you are that triggered by something like that, I would invite you to ask yourself, why is that triggering you so much? Because it's probably not just about that instance, it's probably something from your past. And I talk a lot in my channel about like women's intuition versus ego, and a lot of people are like, how do I know if it's my ego or if it's my intuition? Typically your intuition is going to be much calmer, right? Your ego is going to be your triggers, your traumas, your past issues, things like that, right? I'm seeing a lot of these flip outs as being these women that have some kind of past trigger trauma, something that they have not worked through that they're now projecting onto this man, which isn't really fair to him. One of the big misconceptions that I do see when we talk about women's intuition versus ego and things like that is that ego, when you're talking about like an ego trigger or something, it tends to be very like angry, dramatic, a lot of all that stuff. Whereas your woman's intuition, it's going to tend to be calmer and more grounded. This trigger, anger, this whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that this man is the one that you should be with. It just means that you're responding to him from your trigger and your trauma, not from your intuition. It's really important that you be able to work through that trauma, because that trauma is going to block you from being able to tap into your intuition. You being this triggered by something that's really in reality quite small should be an invitation to you to figure out, like, why are you being triggered by something that is not really that big a deal? Could it be a sign of something that could potentially be a big deal? Could it be a sign that you two are not in alignment about money? Yes. Could it be a sign that maybe you don't have the same priorities? Could it be a sign that this man is cheap, or that he might shame you for wanting to spend money? Could be a sign of that. But unfortunately, your trigger around this, which is probably tied to your past trauma, is not going to let you see the situation clearly. And look, I'll be the first person to say, as a woman, you need to be paying attention to things. You need to be looking at a person for all of who they are. However, if you just let every little trigger make you freak out on somebody and make it mean something that it might not mean, you're gonna block yourself from being able to ever really have an intimate relationship. So if you do find that something a man does on a date brings up a trigger for you, really important to be able to learn in the moment to ask yourself, okay, am I safe right now? Am I safe right? If you're like, oh, I'm hella not safe, like this man is not safe, that's a different situation. If you're like, okay, this is triggering me right now, am I actually safe in this moment? And if you can be like, yeah, I'm actually safe in this moment, because you're not walking down the aisle with this person. Like, you're not necessarily gonna marry this person. You don't know him well enough yet. It's first date. If this person doing something like, say, not ordering cheese or something, or I've seen this with a lot of stuff with like the ick, and there's a lot of like little things that again could be a sign of a problem down the road. But if you immediately go into your trigger, into your trauma, and you don't learn to work through it, you could potentially be blocking somebody that might have some potential. And some of this could be a protective mechanism for women who are afraid of intimacy or afraid to get into a relationship. Again, something you want to ask yourself. It's important. So when a trigger like this comes up, you can ask yourself, like, am I safe in this moment? Now, the trigger might be making you feel unsafe, but like, ask yourself, like, in reality, in my body, in myself right now, am I safe? If you're like, no, I am not safe with this person, which in some situations, like in the man who's being really controlling, I absolutely can see where that woman would be thinking, like, I'm not safe because this man was being very controlling, manipulative, was talking to her very rudely. I can totally see where this woman, I mean, there were a lot of women in the comments who were like, oh my God, this guy seemed like he was going to be a stalker. Like, there was a lot of things about him that were a sign of potential danger. So if you as a woman are like, okay, I don't feel safe with this man, that's when you need to try to take the steps to make sure that you are safe in whatever that is. Sometimes just getting up and leaving could potentially put you at more risk because you don't necessarily want to escalate the situation. You know, how you handle the safety is going to depend on each individual situation, and I can't necessarily give you every scenario of every situation, but asking yourself, like, okay, if I don't feel safe right now, if I feel really unsafe right now, okay, how do I get out of this situation? How do I get myself to safety, and what is the best way to get myself to safety? And it's really important that you ground within your intuition and ask yourself, like, that's your feminine right there, is getting into your intuition and figuring out how you feel safe. If, say, for example, he doesn't order the extra cheese or the guacamole or whatever, or there's something like that, and you get triggered by it, like, oh, hell no, I got the ick, no, I'm upset, whatever. Like, you're triggered by it, you're in your trigger. Drop in your body, am I safe right now? I'm gonna take a guess that probably in that situation, you're safe right there. Like, you're not walking down the aisle with this man, you're not about to create a baby with this man, you were literally just at dinner, you're in a restaurant, this man made a decision that it triggered you, but my guess is that you're safe right now, feeling safety. And you can make a mental note, like, okay, I don't know if I like this about him. I don't know if I like that. Okay, it's noticing. It's observation is all it is. File that in a note. This was something that concerned me, but drop back into your body and realize, okay, but I'm safe in this moment. See what happens, see how it goes, And if you decide that you don't really want to see this person again, you're not required to see this person again. Like, you're not required to date anybody. Nobody is required, I mean, I suppose unless you're in an arranged marriage situation, nobody is required to go on another date with somebody. I'm not for forcing people to do things that they're absolutely uncomfortable with. I would just invite you, when you do find yourself getting that triggered by something, tune in with your body, check in with your body. Am I safe right now? If you don't feel safe, deal with that. If you do, are like, okay, no, I'm safe. I'm in this moment right now, I'm safe. This might be a warning sign, it might not be, I don't know. It's bringing up stuff for me, but I am safe right now. And just go from there. If you jump to, I'm so angry, I'm so frustrated, I'm, you know, this, or, oh, this is bringing up memories of my father who was penny pinching, or my mother who said that I wasn't worth doing this, or an ex-boyfriend who shamed me for doing this, or, you know, this relationship that this guy was too cheap or something, like whatever, like all that stuff, that's your triggers, that's your traumas, that's just something you gotta work through. Take some deep breaths, check into your body, make sure you're safe, and go from there. Doesn't mean that you have to date this person again, doesn't mean that you have to spend the rest of your life with this person. But what I'm seeing with this trend is women getting so triggered by something that in the grand scheme of things is pretty small. If it turns out to be a problem for you, honor that. But in reality, the fact that these women are getting so triggered by this is an indication that it's a trigger, it's a past trauma, it's something within them that doesn't have as much to do with the guy. It has more to do with something that as a woman you need to work through. So that's my invitation to you. It's just a matter of being able to tune more into your woman's intuition, because that's never wrong. Your intuition is never wrong. To be able to tap into your body, to be able to check into your intuition, and to move through your triggers, move through your trauma, and move through your triggers. So I hope that this helped you, because I don't want to see this pick up as a trend, because it seems really weird to me. Because like I said earlier, as a woman, like, yes, you don't want a man who's going to shame you for wanting to be in your feminine pleasures and experiences, which is probably something that a lot of women go through. A lot of women, I've had this happen to me, I know how uncomfortable it is when you really want to be in your full feminine expression and you have usually a man of some kind, in some way in your life, who shames you for wanting to be in your feminine pleasures and experiences. You feel like you have to shut it down. And you long, as the feminine, you long to be with a masculine partner who wants to fully see and witness you in your full feminine pleasure and experiences. I get that. I desire that too. But if a man is just being more cautious about the money that he's spending, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to want you to have a pleasurable experience. If you keep seeing this man, if sometime in that evening, if sometime on another date or something, he shows signs that he's shaming you for your pleasure and experiences, because that's your feminine energy, that's your birthright. He, in his masculine, can be his way, you and your feminine can be your way. If he starts shaming you for how you are, that's a warning sign, that's a problem, that's going to be a conflict. But if he's just doing what he believes in his masculine sense is the priority, is the, you know, the direction, but he's still embracing your feminine pleasure and experiences, that's a great dynamic. You're not going to know for sure if a man is doing that unless you let things go the way they're meant to go. As the feminine, you lean back, you observe. How is the masculine showing up? And if he starts shaming you, he's telling you that you can't order the guacamole or you can't order the cheese, even though you know that that's a pleasurable experience you want to experience, that's a different story. If he's choosing to just not order this thing because he doesn't really think it's practical or worth it, then that's his decision. Because in relationships, you do need some sameness. I've talked about this in other videos. You do need some sameness, but you also need the differences to create the sexual polarity. So like, for example, if one of you needs to have some kind of like expensive penthouse city life and the other one wants to live in the country and live off the land or something, then you two probably are not going to work out, right? But it's normal for the masculine to be more practical about his choice of experiences and think about things in terms of like, is the money worth it? Is it not worth it? It's normal for the feminine to want to show up and fully experience things and think more about the pleasures than to think about the actual practicality. That's normal. And if you have two people that both embrace those aspects of the masculine and the feminine, you can get a great relationship. You can come together in some really great polarity. If either side starts shaming the other side for the way that they're showing up, meaning the feminine starts shaming the masculine for being practical, which is kind of what's happening here, that's going to be a problem. In the same way that if the masculine starts shaming the feminine for how she's showing up and wanting the pleasure and experiences, that's going to be a problem. If you're going to have sexual polarity in a relationship, you need to embrace the role that the other side is playing in that polarity, because you're playing in opposite poles. That's what polarity is. So you need to be able to be open to the opposite poles, because there's going to be differences. You do need some sameness in a relationship. You don't want people to be completely different when it comes to priorities in life and things like that, in the direction of your life, and you do need some sameness, but it's the differences that create the sexual polarity. You don't want to go around destroying those, because that's where the good stuff is. So yeah, I mean, this was a weird topic that I just thought I would throw out there, because I thought that the cheese thing was done. Like the $3 cheese video was kind of viral a little while ago, and that kind of had died down. But then when I saw the guacamole thing, I was like, oh my god, this is a trend. So hopefully I can help break this down in a little bit more perspective. Hopefully, men or women watching this video, I hope you got some good advice in this video as far as how to navigate this thing. I really hope it doesn't pick up and become more popular than it already is, because it's already weird that it's a trend. But anyway, if you have any thoughts on this topic, or, you know, any other topic suggestions or anything, let me know. Comment in the comment section below. I love to hear from you, and I love your topic suggestions. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you're a woman and would like to connect to her feminine energy, I have online courses, details in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.